Oh, I see you're here. Welcome back to my first video that's actually being filmed in 2017. Boy, the last video took a long time to actually make. So hopefully this one will actually arrive on time. Fingers crossed. So anyway, today I'm talking about The Last Guardian. Yep. After who knows how many years since it was actually announced, it's finally come out. And of course, I'll be touching on some of the story, the gameplay, the art style and graphics, the music, and my final thoughts. So, let's go. The game starts off with a shield buried in the ground. That will become important later. But it really starts off with a little boy waking up to a big hairy cat, dog, bird, maybe a bit goat in there as well, thing. Basically it's injured, you end up freeing it, and it helps you along the way, kind of like the lion with the thing in its paw concept. And you decide to go off on your magical adventure. This abandoned like place full of towers and structures that never really gets explained why it's there. There's no information, which is kind of an annoying thing. I mean, true, it's basically more focused on the story of a boy and his that thing. But it would be nice to know what exactly is going on. And apparently its name is called Trico. Not sure why. So basically you're wandering around this place and apparently you're being attacked by what I can only describe as sentient possessed suits of armour that shoot magical symbols at you and grab you and to get away by basically just mashing every single button. Just, you know, mash. So basically you hop around this place with no clue other than get to the giant tower in the middle of it. Also apparently this place is in a giant crater or something. So you're basically hopping along with your animal, helping each other, saving each other, having a few near misses. Occasionally be attacked by the animal because of some sort of brainwashing cage. Where it turns out that the reason that you're there and why the character's covered in tattoos is because the animal was basically one of minions who basically kidnap children and take them to this place, and later you find out they sick them up into this bird statue at the top of the tower and get given food, but you don't really know why they bring the children there. And I guess it's not, once again, I guess it's not the main focus, but once again, a little bit of explanation would be nice. So eventually you finally get to the tower that's apparently controlling these things, but only if they've got the helmets on, and after saving another one that basically only makes a couple of appearances at the end of the game. And you find out that this whole thing is being controlled by some runic ball thing surrounded by goop, which yet again is not explained. I guess they just didn't have time to explain why they don't have time to explain. So you finally get to the top of the tower where your friend Trico, or let's just call him Fluffy, gets attacked by a bunch of other Fluffies and apparently gets his eye gouged out, injured, and the end of his tail ripped off. Oh, spoilers by the way. And apparently throughout this game you have this sort of reflective shield that if you point at something, a laser will come out of Fluffy's tail. Funny thing about the shield and the laser tower, basically appears in the sort of beginning portion of the game, but then disappears for most of the game, then basically comes back near the end. Why? Why not just introduce it later in the game? Oh well. Question portions aside, you end up finding the end of your poor Fluffy's tail near that glob thing. And basically you have to drag it to the glob thing and basically point your shield at it to basically have the tail blow it up, which then causes most of the Guardians things, Fluffies, that aren't basically broken from the spell, like Trico and that other one that only appears once and doesn't really have much of an impact, to basically just stagger back and jump off the building. And apparently the tower is going to collapse, but it's not. And your character dies, but he comes back to life like he always does. Well, basically Trico, with the last of his life, saves the child, but gets attacked by his people. But then you have to send him off, and it's assumed he's dead. But then in the end credit scene where the boy's all grown up, turns out that Trico survived along with that other one that barely had an impact, except for one interesting conversation that I question whether it counts as a boss fight. So, there wasn't really much to talk about the story, mainly because it was basically more, let's tell the story with the atmosphere rather than with an actual story. Which, fair point, I will get onto the atmosphere later, but let's talk about the gameplay. Gameplay is an interesting sort. I mean, it's competent and it's decently made, but I feel that it wasn't really the main focus of the game. So basically, it's your Steam Deck, you can use this to move around, this to control the camera, jump, crouch, walk, roll into things, and...
This is gaming. Oh my god, I'm in a gun battle! Which one of these buttons isn't crouch? Always crouching behind oil barrels or conveniently placed little walls. You're always crouching, but they put the crouch button in different places on different games.
And of course, R1 to communicate with your beast. Now, probably the greatest challenge is actually getting Trico to do what you want him to do. Basically, I feel that the game players, and probably the reason why this took so long, is to make Trico feel more like an actual animal rather than the sort of a clueless NPC that wanders around aimlessly.
Reload, Dr. Freeman! Reload, Dr. Freeman!
Some sort of scripted event with some big thing. It actually feels like a living organic animal. And as a person that both owns a cat and is doing an animal welfare course, I can tell that, yep, it really does feel like a living creature. For better or for worse. You see, it takes, unlike that gormless idiot little girl from Ico, whatever. Trico basically does its own thing. If you point it forward, it might go forward if it wants to. Basically, its instructions are basically vague, and it might do it, but then it might not. Basically, you hold this button down to call it, then hold it down, and then either point it in, use the analog stick to basically point it in the direction you want it to go, jump, and some other buttons that I'm not sure what it makes it do. Kind of unclear. And don't even get me started about that brief section where you have to try and make it dive. I was stuck on that for ages. And from looking at the review by Zero Punctuation, it seems that he probably had a similar issue. But it's never to the point where you find the creature annoying. You can't I mean, look at this face. Can you stay mad at that face? It's like, you look at him and his sort of teardrops, Cyberman stains on his face, and the sort of scornless yet innocent look. It's like, oh, I can't stay mad at you. What's interesting about the game is that both the bumpers, these buttons here and this one, as well as the PS4's pressy downy thing, aren't actually used in the game, which is strange because I think that's a bit of a waste. Maybe it's a holdover from the fact that this was originally intended for the PS3 or PS2, but then again the PS3 and PS2 also had these buttons, this button and these bits. It's just this that didn't exist. Also, occasionally you have to feed the animal even to help it move on. And apparently Trico, Fluffy, whatever, his favourite food is barrels. It eats barrels. And apparently the other creatures eat barrels as well. I don't know why it eats barrels. It might be what's inside the barrel, but it's never really stated what is even in the barrel. I mean, you can see there's some sort of liquid in it, but no. And occasionally you come across these giant urns or pots that it constantly is attracted to, so maybe it contains the same liquid too. Or maybe it's just weed. Or maybe it's just like our cat and just assumes it's food and just doesn't bother to eat it properly or something. So the gameplay is decent, as I've stated. One thing I like is you have to rub the animal's fur to get rid of bloodstains on it when it's being attacked by those sentient armour things. They're basically the evil version of that bloke from Full Metal Alchemist. And you have to pull out spears if they get injured. And a neat fact that I really like is throughout the game you can actually see the creature's horns slowly growing back. Heck, it later has the power to glide, sort of. Even though somehow the wings expand despite it having smaller wings when it's... forget it. So let's move on to our next subject. The music is good, but not really that memorable. It's not quite as famous as Shadow of the Colossus' epic score, or that one song from Ico that is probably the only part of Ico most people remember. Actually, this game is pretty similar to Ico in some ways. I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the graphics themselves are pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't say they're like super realistic, edgy style blowing Malta Witcher 3 graphics, but it has its sort of own art style where basically the structures are very highly detailed. Your character is sort of cel-shaded and cartoony, and Trico's sort of in between with both a sort of cel-shaded style but lots of details in individual feathers being told. Unfortunately, some details really don't need to exist. Like the fact that on occasion you can accidentally see Trico's butthole. Oh dear. I don't think that they'll be advertising that fact on the back of the box. Nope. Nowhere to be seen. And of course this place has a nice air to it. It actually seems a lot brighter and colourful and alive than some of the Japan studios. By the way, creative name there, and I thought British Telecom was a bad name. Other games like Ico and especially Shadow of the Colossus, which is as dark and as dreary as a weekend in Slough, and overall it has a really nice atmosphere that just sucks you in. So now my final thoughts on the game. Pretty good actually. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece. It basically feels less like it's basically a competent game that's basically a playable piece of art. Kind of like Japan Studios' most other games. Is it better than Shadow of the Colossus? Hard to say. I would say that its quality is a bit more consistent than Shadow of the Colossus, with some moments of the Shadow of the Colossus being absolute stonkers and others being, oh my god, why aren't the fucking geysers working on this stupid giant turtle? Sorry for not being the first person to say that. But overall, I would say that it's a little better than Shadow of the Colossus. So anyway, with this game out and Shenmue 3's Kickstarter basically claiming that it'll be out soon or eventually, there's only one real infamous game for big development hell left. Come on, Gaben. Half-Life 3 needs to happen at some point. Please? Please?